Welcome to the Legacy Leaders Podcast. Are you doing the best for your client to help them create their legacy? Are you creating a plan that goes far beyond finances to help people ensure that it becomes the driving force behind all decisions? On this podcast, hosts Katie Beth Hand and Stan Miller will help you with growing your practice and your clients' peace of mind. Together, they bring the best and brightest minds to share with you how to help your clients develop their best legacy. And now, here are your hosts, Katie Beth and Stan.
All right. We'd like to welcome everybody to the Legacy Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Meyer, your co-host for this episode, and I'm the founder of Peak Legacy Partners. Today, my guest is Greg Nussbickel, who is the owner and founder of Nussbickel Law Firm. Greg has helped thousands of clients navigate the often confusing elements of estate planning and administration over the last 17 years or so. Greg, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me, Josh. Appreciate it.
Of course. And before we get started, I would like to personally congratulate Greg. He recently received the distinct honor of being rated preeminent by Martindale-Hubbell. So congratulations on that, Greg. And I'd love to hear, if you don't mind sharing, why that's so important to you.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate you bringing that up. That is one of the kind of gold rings that we look for as practicing attorneys. It's a nice shot in the arm. Martindale-Hubbell is one of the oldest, biggest, legal firms out there that rate attorneys. This is a peer review. So this is, not just Google reviews and that kind of thing, but actually the attorneys that you work with, they reach out to and get some feedback on. So, I was really happy to achieve that. And, it's nice to get a little recognition once in a while.
Absolutely. And being peer reviewed stands out quite a bit more than, being, like you said, independent reviews or so-called independent reviews. So,
yeah, getting all your friends to give you 5 stars is a different story, right?
100%. 100%. So yeah, could you tell us, now I know your background a little bit familiar, that you went to FSU and University of Miami Law Schools. What kind of got you down the path of making a commitment to trial law school and successfully completed those honorable universities?
Yeah, well, growing up, like most people, didn't have a clear path. Although my mom would tell a story that I said I wanted to be a prosecutor because that's who put away bad guys. So it was that or a firefighter, and so I kind of went down this road. I think of myself as a pretty analytical person, kind of logical, maybe to a fault sometimes. So it seemed like a natural fit to go down this road. I like reading the cases. I did kind of start off litigating things, but for the most part, the contracts and the transactional work, that always appealed to me. The long history of really smart people making great laws was just something attractive. So out of school, I got a finance degree at FSU undergrad, and at that point, I kind of knew I wanted to do law school, and so I just stayed there and kept going. And then after that, I actually got that LLM degree from Miami, got a little more kind of specialized training in some areas there. So a bit of a glutton for punishment for that kind of thing, but it suits me pretty well.
Yeah. And it's great having the financial background, because I'm sure that, an integral part of estate planning is also the financial piece for people to have their affairs planned properly. So you work closely, I would imagine, with advisors and insurance professionals and things like that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of touches on so many areas of an individual's life. As you know, Josh, you deal with a lot of these things that, it's not just about inheritance, but it's maybe about taxes, and it's about income, and it's about asset protection, and various financial instruments have their pluses and minuses, and transacting those things can have consequences. So you at least have to have kind of a working knowledge of those things before you can dive in and know what you don't know.
Yeah. What once you decided to steer down the path of going into the legal field, what made you choose estate planning specifically? What's the most rewarding aspect of what you're doing now?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, right out of school, getting jobs, there was more demand in the litigation, fighting in court kind of scenario. And, part of me is kind of attracted to that, or at least was at the time, just because it's kind of where the rubber meets the road. You get to make your argument, you get some feedback, and, the judges or juries make decisions. And so, there's kind of an excitement to that. But as you get through it, it tends to be a bit of a grind. There's a lot of nitpicking. There's a lot of pressure on things. There's, just difficulties that come along with that. So pretty quickly, I think I understood I was better suited for the transactional kind of situation where you're really trying to solve problems. It's not about wins and losses. With what I do now, there really doesn't have to be any loser at all, right? You can really have a win-win. It doesn't have to be a zero-sum kind of situation. And I like to think that's what we accomplish, is to take something that may be disorderly or not consistent with what the client is really trying to accomplish, sometimes a bit of a mess, and clean it up, focus them in on what they want, and make that happen. So that's a pretty fulfilling thing.
Absolutely. Was it difficult in kind of transitioning from something where you have immediate feedback, almost immediate gratification, to something that's so delayed where you don't necessarily see results until, years down the road?
Yeah, it's a good question. It does kind of leave things open-ended a little bit more than, yeah, you win that hearing, you lose that hearing, you live to fight another day. But that, and you have so much change and flux in the laws over time too, right? You might have prepared the perfect plan day one, and life moves on and the laws have changed and taxes are different, and so you always have to be kind of revisiting that. And even just coming back and making sure that client did the funding of the trust the way that you asked, or they bought something new and they forgot all about that, or all those things. So yeah, it really isn't an in and out scenario. It's more of a relationship over time. And as we kind of alluded to before, sometimes you're the sounding board for something that really isn't estate planning, but it kind of tangentially relates to it. So, a real estate question, or there's a new grandchild, or those kinds of things. So, you have to look at it in more of a long haul scenario. And I've been practicing 22 years now. So you've seen the life cycle. I know you've seen this too, Josh, that you plan, and then there's a family that wasn't there, and then maybe somebody passes on and it's a new generation, and you're just kind of there for all those pieces.
Right. Life has a way of constantly changing, right? We have to
Yeah.
kind of stay in front of some of those changes. On that topic, I feel like a lot of times my clients that we've worked with in the past, they feel like they set up their estate plan and it's a done deal. What are your recommendations as far as what are some key things for people, key reminders to go back and review everything and make sure they're still aligned with what their goals are?
Yeah, it varies a little bit. I would say every 5 years, 10 years on the outset, that you dust off that binder. You look through it, with your spouse if you're married. You kind of go over some of those choices, confirm it's kind of the basic idea you like. Because a lot of times that's some of the big changes. The person that you thought might be a good agent in your power of attorney, maybe you're having second thoughts about, or maybe they've passed on. Or maybe you just don't remember things the way that it actually was written down on paper. I know you probably see that too. Memory is something that's very fluid also, and sometimes very selective over time. So they look at that like, wait, why would I choose my best friend from college? I don't even talk to that guy anymore. Those are the obvious things. And then the other things, of course, if you have a death in the family, or you have a new addition, or somebody maybe is getting towards incapacity, or they become incapacitated, how do you deal with that? If your assets have changed significantly, hopefully for the better, the market's been doing really well, or go in the other direction. Maybe you have to look at things a different way, but you might have, for instance, not been in a taxable estate scenario, and you had all that great stock appreciating a long time, and maybe that's something you have to look at. Or maybe, as you know, Josh, the estate tax exemption amount might be coming down to earth a little bit. So, another time to take a look at it. So, I mean, if nothing else, in 5 years, take another gander at it. But it doesn't hurt to just maybe come in for a quick review and see if it's really what you want still.
Absolutely. Who would you describe as kind of your ideal client? And then if you could offer an example, maybe of, obviously without details, somebody you've helped recently and how you helped them.
Yeah, I personally mostly focus and enjoy more, modest estates. We don't do a whole lot of taxable work because, you have to be in some pretty rarefied air today for that to really be necessary. And it's a step too far for most people. So we do a lot of revocable trust planning, some will packages sometimes. And again, I really like the situation where someone has maybe put this off their entire lives. That's not unusual. Or they did something 20 years ago and everything's different now. And they just really need to get from something that's problematic to something where they can really be on a good track and really be comfortable and feel empowered at that point, and without spending an exorbitant fee on something like that, and without it being too difficult, without them giving up control and all that kind of thing. So more, a couple that may be in the low seven figures or something like that has assets, they're concerned about it, they don't have necessarily a lot of more complex wishes, maybe not necessarily a special needs situation, but they do want to cover a lot of contingencies. I really enjoy that because I think we can go from zero to a super solid plan without too much trouble there.
Yeah. Do you think people kind of have a tendency to overestimate the complexity or what their level of involvement has to be with the estate planning process, and that maybe deters them sometimes and causes them to procrastinate a little bit?
Yeah, I think that's one of the big ones there. And doing this as long as I've had, I have kind of a psychological profile, I think, of estate planning, what the mental blocks are, and what some of those hindrances are. And we all suffer from that, right? It's very easy to put things off and procrastinate things that don't seem like they're urgent right at the moment, because you may feel like you're younger and you're healthier and you don't see these issues popping up. But of course, life happens in a way that we don't expect it. Yeah, I think almost invariably people are very concerned about the cost. I think they overestimate how much it's going to be, and are usually a little pleasantly surprised. And the overall difficulty of it, I think they're imagining maybe a little more of an old-fashioned approach where you might have to drive to your lawyer's office 5-6 times and you got to be there with your spouse, and you just really don't have time in your life to spare, when nowadays it can be in a modern, more efficient, more expedient manner. So that's a big part of what I think the service is these days and what's expected. Years ago, it was, I want to sit down and I want to look you eye to eye. And some people still have that, and that's great. But nowadays, people are asking me if they can sign remotely, if they can do this all without ever coming in, because they want to e-sign, they want to, pay online, and they're just busy. And this is something they want to do, but they want it to be done efficiently. And we kind of specialize in that.
Yeah. It's interesting how the tables have turned now that technology is, so common.
Yeah.
And I will say, give you a quick quick testimonial that some of the clients that I've had the opportunity to send clients Greg's way, and they've always consistently had rave reviews about the efficiency of the process and how quickly and smooth and everything was done. And we obviously know that it was done very well as well. So,
yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have any stories of when somebody maybe deferred estate planning for too long and something was a little bit of a horror story, didn't work out the way they probably had intended?
Yeah, there's definitely those that come up. So we do a fair amount of probate work also, not usually for our own clients, because we would have usually helped them avoid all of that. But for others that passed on in the area, they call up, can we handle that court process? And that's always a bear. Florida probate is just always unpleasant. It takes mostly a year, sometimes multiple years to wrap up. And you can just imagine within that time frame, all kinds of other things pop up, right? You got these creditors that have a red carpet to come in and make a claim. They can be hard to get rid of sometimes. You've got confusion that happens, hurricanes that hit, assets that, there's all kinds of things can come along. So, the horror stories that we see are where there's just been really no planning and no communication and no beneficiary designations on a financial instrument, right? Sometimes that can be okay, but not only do they not do that, but there's a big mystery about what that individual owned, and was it co-owned, was there a beneficiary? And so sometimes you're kind of hamstrung. You don't know if there's a will, because that was never brought up and there was no attorney involved, but somebody feels like there might have been. So they want to look in that apartment, but you can't get into the apartment because you don't have letters of administration. So you got to open up a court case and you're flying blind, but you don't even know who the client should be, much less the beneficiaries, right? And then you see the will and you got other problems. So It's those kind of things that really bog down the process and that can end up being, really stressful on the families. You already have the loss, and now you have all this friction and difficulty to go along with it. It can be really difficult for everybody to deal with.
Yeah, adding insult to injury, right?
Yep.
How about the opposite side of the spectrum when the having appropriate planning in place really saves somebody from what otherwise could have been a potential disaster?
Yeah, I mean, we get a lot of calls from our clients or other clients that had done their planning and followed through on it well. And a lot of times they call up and say, we got to open the probate, we got to handle this estate, and how much is it going to cost? And a lot of times before it even gets to me, my paralegal Michelle will go through and talk about the assets and how they're owned, and you can end up, well, we really don't have to do anything at this point. The ball's in your court. You have access to these assets. You can go ahead and distribute and be done with it. And you really don't have to hire this attorney at all. You can put this behind you. You can move on with other things. Those are kind of the happy endings where I think the light bulb comes on when you actually see it happen. Like, oh, okay, we did this for a reason. And we don't have to fight in court for the next year and, have this difficulty to grapple with.
Yeah. I can't imagine what a sigh of relief that is for families when they sit down not knowing what to expect as a result of what the planning that's already taken place, and somebody's able to tell them that you have nothing to worry about. That's
yeah. And a lot of times along with that, you see nothing to worry about. Like there's some bills that have come in, but maybe they're not collectible now, right? Or maybe you can negotiate those down to pennies on the dollar, because you put yourself in this good position, so you can have extra benefits that go along with it. And you're not fighting with that bank manager about trying to get at this account, and they all have their own different ideas on it. You've given them the ability to administer your estate. And a lot of this also that we don't concentrate on as much is, this is not just for after death. This is also, if you needed some help paying your bills, you want to make sure the right person is able to do that. And if they need to get health information, you need that HIPAA waiver, you need that health surrogate, or they're going to keep running into roadblocks and you're not doing anyone any favors that time. So, I sometimes like to get away from just the inheritance side of it, but also the helping yourself and helping them to help you at the same time.
Right. Very good. I know we touched a little bit about the efficiency of your process, but just kind of circling back, are there any unique aspects of your approach, your philosophy, your process that you want to highlight that kind of differentiate you between some of the other professionals out there?
Yeah, we touched on it a little bit, and it is, kind of a passion of mine, is the efficiency. And for so many reasons, and I've been, kind of fine tuning my process for better part of 20 years now. And I think we have a really good onboarding situation about how to get the right amount of information in the right format, to get that client really thinking about their wishes. And then when we have that initial consultation, it's more fruitful for everyone. It's more productive, right? And in the very beginning of my doing this kind of work, I would just, have people kind of come into the office and we chat about things, but it was a lot of information, but they hadn't really organized their thoughts, and it, wasn't as helpful, right? And sometimes that's kind of a hindrance to something. So, at every step, from the onboarding to the drafting to the review to the signing, we've really looked at that process and we've tried to make it easier on the client, because that's a big part of the follow through. It's also a big part of making sure we have accuracy, and clear communication, because I think it's kind of tempting sometimes to just chat about something over the phone, or just kind of, be a little bit more loose with all of this. But we want to make sure from the very beginning we're getting all the information, we're getting the correct spellings, we're getting their wishes nailed down in a way that they understand it, and it's being reinforced, and all that kind of thing. So I think our process, as much as anything else, is what differentiates. And you've seen from the reviews with your clients and others, it's that big sigh of relief, but it's also that, I've finally taken control of this thing that I've put off for so long, and it wasn't nearly as bad as we thought. It's almost like going to the dentist, right? You get that root canal, and it may have been a little bit painful along the way, but it wasn't as bad as you thought, and now you're off to the races.
Yeah, absolutely. What has been, from a practice standpoint, what was the biggest, or what has been the biggest hurdle a couple decades into having your own practice of just kind of maintaining your practice and serving clients in the manner in which you feel compelled to do?
Yeah, I've always enjoyed the business side of it. So I've never thought of that as a real hindrance, but you do wear a lot of hats if you're a solo practitioner and you have staff, but you're you're doing the work, but you're also managing the staff, but you're also, trying to develop new business and maybe having partnerships. And early on, it was really just me kind of doing everything. And then I was, lucky enough to get some help along the way, which makes a big difference. But for me, it's a lot better fit than maybe the law firm situation where there's levels of bureaucracy. And, I like to be free to try to explore new ways to serve clients or different opportunities out there without having to get permission from anyone else out there. So I wouldn't trade my situation really for anything else out there, but you do have to keep your tap dancing shoes on. You got to be ready to move. And on top of all these things, you don't want to overextend. I think that happens with a lot of attorneys, but by the same token, you can't let things get off track either. So you take it as it comes and you do the best with it. But so far, it's been a fun ride.
Nice. Speaking of a fun ride, what aspect would you say you enjoy most as we get ready to close out here?
I really enjoy trying to bring this to more and more people. And you've read the statistics, that 2/3 of Americans believe that having a will is either important or very important, but only 1/3 of Americans actually have one, right? And that just really crystallizes the whole idea. And when you get deeper into it, the number one answer for why they haven't done the will, even though they know it's important, they just haven't gotten around to it. That's the answer. It's over half the people will say that. And, it seems like such a shame. They're not saying it's too expensive. They're not saying I can't make these decisions or whatever. It just hasn't happened. So I feel like kind of, my calling is to get them beyond that. You can make this happen. We can make it a lot easier than you think. And most of our planning is revocable, changeable anyway. So it's not like you're locked into this forever. You can tweak it as time goes on. But, that really is the most fun, is to take them from 20, 30, 40, 50 years of thinking about this to pen to paper, and maybe we got it done in a couple of months, and it's all smiles. That's really a great job to have.
Absolutely. And the fact that you do such a good job at reducing friction, I mean, obviously a plan that's not fully executed and followed through with doesn't work at all. So the fact that you're able to do that is, says a lot also.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for listening. I'm sorry. I wanted to give you an opportunity to share with everybody the best way to touch base with you or reach out to you.
Yeah. I think visiting my website's a great way to go. So it's www.will.estate, no .com or anything like that. So you get right to me. Or of course, if you Google Nussbickel, I think I'm the only Greg Nussbickel on the planet. So, you'll find our reviews out there. You'll find some of the videos that we've done and all that. And, you'll see the services we provide. Again, if this is something that sounds like you've been wanting to do this and the reasons that we mentioned have been holding you back, I can guarantee we can get over that and get you to a place where you've really done a huge favor for your family. You've really gotten things in order, and you'll be really happy with the result.
Well, we certainly appreciate you joining us today, Greg. It's been fantastic. And I know that all of our listeners are going to be, very happy with the information that you shared with us today. And thanks again for being here.
Yeah, thanks again. I really appreciate you having me, and good talking with you.
Likewise. Thanks, Greg.
You've been listening to the Legacy Leaders Podcast with Katie Beth Hand and Stan Miller. For more information on them and the show, please visit pinnaclelegacylaw.com. If you like what you've learned today, do share the program with your friends and subscribe wherever podcasts are found.
49 faces looked to him in triumph. Over the last 12 months, they had each taken turns and promoted his business for a week at a time, driving over $987,342 in revenue. What if you had a network of 50 centers of influence who promoted your business every week for a year? Grab your copy of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, at 33% off the Amazon price by going to ultimatepodcastbook.com. Again, that website for 33% off the Amazon price is ultimatepodcastbook.com.